Hey everyone, it's me, Kirk Mastin from Mastin Labs, and today I've got 5 hidden editing tools in Lightroom that are going to change your editing. They are a dust spot tool, a neutral density gradient filter, that's a big word, using the J key to find out where you are blocking up in the shadows or where you're blowing out the highlights. Also, we've got total or match total exposure and sharpening masks. All these tools are really cool. You may not need them all the time, but when you need them, you need them. And I want to show you where they are and how to use them today in this video. So let's get started and I'll go over them one by one. So the first tool we're going to go over is the tool that you use to find dust spots on your image. And this can come from dust spots on your sensor when shooting at a high aperture, like in this case, f7.1. What you need to do is hit Q to bring up your tool overlay bar. And then you can either hit A or just click on Visualize Spots. And you will turn on this masking that will show you where the dust spots are on your image. There's a little slider down here where you can increase the intensity of that. So if I just increase it, you can start to see the dust spots appearing in the sky. And they're showing up as these like little donuts or little halos. The really bright ones are the ones that are the worst offenders. And those are the ones you're going to want to go after. So I usually turn it up, kind of high like this and then back it off to get rid of the lesser spots so you can really focus on the bad ones. And once you have this up, you just have your healing brush on and you just click over them and you get rid of these little halo donut things. And that's getting rid of the spots in your image from dust on your sensor. Or if you're shooting film, actual real life dust. Very, very useful tool. So yeah, as you can see, it makes it so easy. I can just zoom through this photo and get rid of all of those bad dust spots pretty quickly. And then I just click on Visualize Spots, turn it off. I can get off of my healing brush, and now there are no spots in this photo. And I would just continue on, with a quick edit, like say, I don't know, gold 200, decrease the exposure, and do my white balance and tint. All the usual stuff. But I just wanted to show you how easy it is to use that dust tool and how effective it can be in finding those little pieces of dust without you having to like zoom in and just like squint and look around the entire image. So there you go. That is the first tool. Okay, the second tool is a big favorite of mine. It's the neutral density gradient filter. It has the longest name in the world in analog photography, or not necessarily analog, but you can also simulate this with an actual glass filter that goes from light to dark that you would put in front of your lens. They have the same filter in Lightroom, and it's meant to, in its most classic sense, darken the sky and reduce the exposure in the sky so you can match the exposure or the contrast and exposure range from the sky and the ground and get them kind of even. I'll show you just a very basic use of the neutral density filter, and then I'll show you some really cool masking options that are slightly hidden. And this is one of my favorite tools. So let's use, I don't know, they're in the desert. Let's use Ektar. No, let's use, no, Ektar is awesome, the red rock. Okay, there's Ektar. The exposure down below looks pretty good. I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to just turn on lens correction here to even out the exposure around them. And now I want to bring the sky down. The sky is like just super white, super blown out. And what I would normally do is I would go to this little square over here, drop the exposure on it, or you could lower whites. There's different ways you could go about this, but the simplest would be just to drop the exposure and then you pull down from the top and you make this kind of graduated darker area in the top. As you can see, when I'm just hovering over the little dot that I pulled down, you can see where it's masking the image, and it's basically a straight line where you can rotate it like this if you want, and it's pretty quick and effective. I can just drop the exposure here and start bringing in the sky. The only problem with it, and you can see it pretty quickly, is that it's hitting these rocks here and it's making them really dark. I could lift this up, but now you've got this area down here that's not getting hit very well. I could lengthen this to make the gradation smoother. But as I hover over this, you can still see that it's not really hitting the rocks in a really nice way. It's kind of a complex shape. So what you can do, and this is the cool hidden part, well, it's not super hidden, but it's relatively new, is you can go to the range mask section at the bottom, click it, and now you can mask off this neutral density gradient filter according to either color or luminance. And in this image, you could use either. Color bases it on the color that you want to make darker. So in this case, it would be the sky. I would take this little dropper, click the sky, and now when you look at the mask, you can see that it's just picking up, it's trying to avoid the rocks. This isn't working too well because there's not too much color in the sky. I'm holding down Option while I'm sliding this mask slider, and this lets you see what is being selected. It's working okay. It's working a little bit better than using no mask at all. But in this case, I'm actually going to go to Luminance, and I'm going to do it with Luminance. So with Luminance, you don't have to push down Option. You can just click Show Luminance Mask, and we'll show you what is being targeted in this neutral density filter. So I'm going to bring it down. I want to get all of this sky, okay, without getting these rocks and without getting the top of this guy's head. So with the luminance mask enabled, and red is what is going to be darker, I can go to this range slider and adjust the top and the bottom of this mask. So I don't want any of the darker tones. And luminance, for those that don't know, it just means the light of something, the luminosity, how light something is. So I can take the bottom end of the slider and pull it up and start subtracting these darker areas of the rock from that mask. Now, if I wanted to, I could also pull down the top and take away the brightest parts, but I want to keep that maxed out. I want to get all the light areas that I can. And now, with that selected, with a luminance mask selected, it really slides around these rocks a lot nicer. In fact, I could raise it up just a little bit more, kind of try to find a perfect, happy medium. I'm going to turn it off. And now, as you can see, I can darken this, and it's not digging into the rocks as much. There's still a little bit of an overlap, and that's controlled with the smoothness slider down here. So you could have like a really harsh transition from light and dark. So as I pull this over, you're seeing that the rocks are really getting separated from the sky. But if you do that, it can start to look really kind of crazy. I'll show you what I mean. So there we go. You get this kind of like reverse tonality here, which is not very nice. But it does let you have that little bit of fine tuning if you want with that mask. Anyway, try it. It's very intuitive. You'll get it. It's making me trip over my words a little bit here because there's so many little tweaks that you can do, but it's really a fantastic tool and super useful. One other way that you can use it is in an image where you want to mask off kind of a complex background from the foreground and do it by color. So in this way, you could also get there through the hue, saturation, luminance panel where you just take like greens and yellows and play with those if you wanted to drop these trees down. But you can also do it with this mask that I showed you on the previous picture. I'll show you what I mean. So we'll just Ektar all day. I'm just going to do a quick adjustment to this. Drop their skin tones a little bit. Looks pretty good. Let's do all soft. All right, there's a nice quick edit. Beautiful. Okay, so if I wanted to drop the luminosity of the trees, like mask that out and bring it all down, I could just go to the graduated neutral density filter, drag it down. Oh, their heads are getting dark. Well, we can fix that because all I need to do is go to the range mask and go to color. And now I'm going to select the greens. And as soon as I selected it, you saw that their faces brightened up again. Now it's just this background that's being selected. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. If I hold down Option and slide the amount mask here, you can see what is being targeted. And in fact, I can back it off a little bit and make sure I don't target them at all. So now it's just the background. Once I have that selected, I can mess with just that one area, this green area behind this neutral density filter. And I can slide it up and down and control exactly how light or dark I want the area to be without them getting darker. It's almost like you're almost relighting relighting the scene, which is kind of crazy. It's almost as if you had a softbox or something on them and making them brighter while letting the background get darker. It's cool. There's a lot of things you can do with this filter. Okay, so let's move on. So that was the neutral density gradient filter and using either a color or luminance mask. Next, I'm going to go to the J key. There used to be a thing that we did called the J trick. It's not really necessary so much anymore, but it utilized, and you can look it up if you want. It's not important though. Please don't look it up, because we've moved on from that. Let me start over. So the next tool we have is the J key. It's a very simple tool. If you hit the J key, it basically is telling you what is clipping in the image, either the highlights or the shadows. Highlights are going to be represented with red, and shadows are going to be represented with blue. And I find it to be a very useful tool if you're trying to figure out, first of all, if you can save something in an image, like when you're editing it, or also how far to go with exposure or other adjustments as you're editing. You can kind of just check in with the J key, hitting it to turn it off and on. One cool thing about Mastin Labs is that all of our presets and styles are modeled after real film. One really cool thing that real film does is that it protects the highlights. It doesn't let the highlights blow out in the same way that real film does, unless you're shooting slide film. But like color negative film protects the highlights, we do the same. So if I was to use, say, Fuji 400H on this image, it will instantly protect those highlights. So the J key was showing you what was blown out. I used Fuji 400H, and now I can just really make this light and airy. Yes, I know I just showed a little more clipping here. That's fine, because it gives me a chance to show you another cool tool that's included with every pack, which are the tone profiles, where you can further protect the highlights even beyond what you initially would get with the base film. So with all soft or highlight soft, I think all soft in this case, you can start pushing this image to be really light and airy, and that is something that a lot of our customers love, especially in the Fuji original pack. So that is how you use the J key. Super useful. I'll do it one more time so you can see. So like on this image, I need to figure out what part of their outfits are becoming pure white, and I can do that just by hitting the J key. So again, I'll do another Fuji 400H edit. I just applied Fuji 400H. I'm going to warm them up just a little bit and add just a little magenta for those nice skin tones. There you go. Nothing is blown out in the photo at this point because they're all protected, the highlights and shadows. That is the J key. Very useful. It's kind of like a button that you just use to kind of check in with the image as you go. This is especially important if you're printing. You don't want anything to be pure white usually. You want to have some information in all parts of the photo. And the J key shows you that clipping and shows you where things are either pure black, meaning they're going to block up when you print it, or pure white, meaning there's going to be no ink on the paper depending on how you print, and you don't want that either. Okay, moving on down. Here is like the funkiest hidden tool of this whole video. It is called Match Total Exposures. And it's really, really hidden. I don't know why it's so hidden, but it is used to match the exposure between a lot of similar photos. So in this case, the photographer was shooting, and they're shooting their couple around, and there's less light here than there is here, and you can see that they're kind of overexposed in this image. And The way that I use match total exposure is in particular in a fast moving event where you're going from lighting situation to lighting situation, and maybe you're on manual and you forget to change something, or you're going quick. Match total exposure lets you pick one image and then match it. The Lightroom calculates an equivalent exposure across all of the other images. It's best just to show you exactly what I mean. So I'm not applying any presets or anything to these, just showing you how the tool works. So you go up to Photo at the top, go to Develop Settings, and then way at the bottom, way down here, it says Match Total Exposures. So I'm going to select the image I want to match to, so it's this image. Now I'm going to select the other 4 or the other 3. I'm going to go up to Photo, go to Develop Settings, and then go to Match Total Exposure. You can also do it through, a fairly complicated keystroke if you want. But there you go, and you can see as soon as I click that, Lightroom calculated the exposure for all the other 3 images to be kind of roughly in the ballpark of the first one. And it's a nice first step to do before you start editing, because now I can go through and edit these images without having to do as much work, especially if my exposure was jumping around between lighting situations. So there we go, real quick edit. If you've seen in my other videos for speed editing, I would edit this video, select the next 4, and then sync them. I don't have exposure selected. I'm just going to sync them as is. And now you have 4 images that are all very uniform and edited. Pretty cool, right? Easy peasy. All right, so here is our last tool. And everyone is familiar with sharpening, obviously, and we get a lot of questions about it. So I'm going to give you my 2-part answer to sharpening. One is I don't really mess with sharpening personally when working in Lightroom. The default is pretty good, especially if you're editing a lot of images. And when I export, I set it to either medium for screen if it's going to go on a website somewhere, or I would do medium for print if I'm printing it. And so far, everything's been good. But sometimes you need to get extra careful with your sharpening, maybe for a billboard or a magazine cover or some really careful reproduction. And that's where these tools come in. All right, turn off my J key. So sharpening, let's talk about sharpening. I edited for a very long time before I started realizing how powerful sharpening can be. With the latest editions of Lightroom, you have these really cool hidden tricks that you can do. So if you hold down Option, you can go through the different sharpening sliders and really dial in what is sharp and what isn't, and be very, very specific about it. So if I hold down Option, I'm going to start at the bottom actually. I'm going to go to Masking, and if I click this, I can slowly, while holding down Option, if I let go of it, you don't see that. But if I hold it down, you can see what is going to be sharpened, and it's going to show up as white. Okay? Or as, sorry, not as white. Yeah, as white, because I'm masking it out. So with the masking slider, I'm now removing parts of the image that are showing up in black that are not going to be sharpened. So as I slide up, I'm now focusing more and more on kind of like edge details rather than the detail of the entire image. So if I wanted to sharpen more edge details, I'd slide up the masking to about, 40, 50%. Now I go to Detail. This is a little harder to see, so I'm going to zoom in. If I go to Detail and holding down Option, and it may be kind of hard to see at home, I'm not sure, but you can see very faintly through this gray what is being sharpened. And I'm moving Detail to focus on their hair and like her jewelry and her dress. I don't want to sharpen their skin. I want to keep that smooth. So I'm moving up the Detail slider a little bit till it feels right. Okay, and now I'm going up to Radius. And now I can, determine the radius of the sharpening. So if you are very old school and you used Photoshop to sharpen photos, you may have a long time ago used unsharp mask to sharpen, and it kind of works the same way. It's very hard to explain in words, but if you just play with the slider, you'll understand what I mean. So this is kind of showing the depth of the sharpening, I guess is the best way to put it. If I pull this way up, you can see that the radius for the sharpening around the detail that I selected is getting huge. I don't want to sharpen the bokeh up in the trees, so I'm going to just keep this lower. And again, I'm just focusing on the couple. So I'm going to keep it about here. And then if you go up to the amount, instead of getting that kind of weird gray screen, it just turns the whole image grayscale. And this is to help eliminate distractions when seeing kind of the overall amount of sharpening. So in grayscale, now that I'm at the last step, I can slide this amount slider and see how much overall sharpening I want on the selection I made below in the other 3 sliders. So it's kind of the final touch. I'm just gonna go up to about here and I'm gonna call it good. All right, so how much was actually sharpened with all those little adjustments? Well, if I turn it on and off, you can see. So here's before and here's after. In fact, I'm gonna get a little bit closer. Whoops, maybe you can see it a little bit better. So I'm gonna turn it back on again, or turn it off. Okay, this is pre-sharpening, and that's with sharpening. Really, really cool. I mean, that's like, it's a lot of work. That's a lot of work to sharpen an image, but if it's a super important image, it's gonna be printed really large or in a magazine or for a client or in a catalog or something like that, you need to master these detail tools. And I personally, knowing what I know now about the masking things that you can do, holding down the Option key while sharpening, I would have rearranged the tools where you start with masking and then detail and then radius and then amount, because that's the order that I think you should go in when you use this tool. But you'll figure out the way you want to do it, and that's totally cool. This wouldn't be complete without me just, finishing the edit. So I'm going to pick Fuji 400H, why not? Increase the exposure, and then adjusting temperature and tint to taste. So he's got a little bit of magenta in his suit. I'm going to remove that. And they're a little bit warm. There we go. And let's do all soft to kind of finish it off. And now they're a little too cool. Okay, I could fiddle around with this forever. But I just wanted to show you before and after and how these tools work. So I hope you found this interesting. It's 5 really cool tools. They're a little bit buried inside of Lightroom, but just try them out. They're very intuitive once you start using them, and you may not need them all the time, but when you need them, and now you know where they are. So I hope you found this interesting. If you enjoy these videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button. Also hit the little bell so you won't miss any of the new videos that we do every week. If you are not already a customer of Mastin Labs, it doesn't matter. We just want to help you out. We want to make you a better photographer, help you with your editing, let you express your art at the highest level possible. And one way you can do that is by joining our Facebook group. Just type in Mastin Labs Community on Facebook. Join us. Doesn't matter if you own anything or not. And you'll find the most helpful and friendly community on the internet for a photographer. You can also drop in your raw files to be edited with Mastin Labs presets so you can see the beauty and the magic that you can unlock in your photo with our products. If you want to reach us directly, you can go to m.me/Mastin Labs, and you can go right into our DMs and ask us questions. We'll help you out personally. So I hope you enjoyed everything you saw today. We're going to have many more cool videos to come. And until then, happy editing.